Hi everyone, Rob B here with Rob D. Now, you may have heard of our love for Rightmove. And as we do spend so much time on Rightmove every single day, we've become pretty good at using it. So this week on the Property Podcast, we're going to teach you how to use Rightmove and Zoopla like a pro.
Yeah, welcome to the Property Podcast. This is episode 235, where basically, let's be honest, we're just trying to salvage something from all those hours and trying to take all that time on Rightmove and repurpose it into something that's useful for you. And actually, I think you're bound to learn something new, and there's some tips for Zoopla in there as well. We've got some love for Zoopla. So that's coming up, plus you'd be lost without our resource of the week. But first, Rob, a couple of items of business. The first one being that we've got a webinar coming up.
We have. So this is on the back of our really popular Discovery Days. So thank you to everybody who's attended those. For those who don't know what our Discovery Days were, let me explain. It was where Rob and I would talk about RMP property and yellow lettings and explain to you, the listener, how they work and how they can help you. The reason why we put those days together was because, well, we hardly ever talk about what we do outside the podcast on the podcast. And being completely honest, other than a little mention here and there, it makes us feel a bit uncomfortable. So we were racking our brains on how can we talk about businesses that could help many people listening to the podcast without turning the podcast into a sales pitch, which we don't want, and I'm sure you don't want either. So we decided to turn the Discovery Day in person into a regular webinar. We've not done this before, but the reason we're so keen to do it is when you do a day, then people have to travel to London, take the day out, where you just have to sit at home, log in via your computer or your phone, wherever's easiest, and join us. So what do you have to do to join us?
Okay, so first thing you need to do is make sure that you're free on the 27th of September at 6 p.m, because that's when we're going to be doing it. Having confirmed that, all you need to do is pop over to thepropertyhub.net/discover. So that's thepropertyhub.net/discover. Book your place, pop it in the calendar, then turn up. It really is that easy. So when you come along, you'll learn what RMP property can do for you. You'll learn what yellow lettings can do for you. Maybe you'll then want to go on to use those companies. Maybe you just want to know for the future what they offer for when you're ready. But either way, I'm sure you'll find it interesting, and I'll give you a little insight into what it is we actually do. Because like Rob said, we don't like to go on and on about it on the podcast. We don't like to mention it at the end of our regular webinars. When we're doing a normal webinar, it's just pure content the whole way through. No upsell, no sales pitch. This is your opportunity to find out what we do. And there's still going to be no hard sell. It's going to be impossible for you to give us any money on the day. But it's a way for you to find out that information and get a little insight into our lives.
Indeed, so join us on the 27th at 6 p.m. via the link that we mentioned. Another non-sell, is because we're telling you something's sold out, is the summits. So yes, we mentioned the summits that were coming up, one in Manchester, one in London. Manchester, actually, Rob, by the time this goes out, we would have sat down and done, so hello to those people attended. And also the London one in November is sold out as well. That's it for this year, no more. But if you want to get on the waiting list to find out about the next one first, then go to thepropertyhub.net/summit, put your details in there, and we'll let you know when the next one's launched, which will be next year now. So if you have always wanted to go on a summit, probably best to do that because they do sell out way in advance, as you've just heard.
Yep, so the link to get on the list for that is propertyhub.net/summit. All right, so let's get into our topic of the week this week, how to use Rightmove and Zoopla like a pro. So if you're listening to this podcast, even if this is the first episode you've ever listened to, you've never looked into investing in property before, you're guaranteed to have heard of Rightmove and Zoopla, I'm sure. And if this is not your first episode, then chances are you use one or both of them quite a lot. We certainly count ourselves in among that number, and we speak to a lot of people who also use these all the time. But we think that hardly anyone is going to be using these to their full potential. There's all kinds of little tricks that you can use to make your life easier, save some time, or find things that other people are not finding. So that's what we're going to be doing this week. We're going to teach you how to use Rightmove and Zoopla like a pro, and in the process, get an advantage over other investors. So let's take one site at a time to keep it simple. We'll run through what you can do. Then what you might want to do is if there's something in here that takes your fancy, you might want to then come back and listen to the relevant section again while you're actually on the site, because it's kind of difficult to explain in words sometimes what we're talking about. But Rob, why don't you kick us off with some of your Rightmove tips?
Okay, so first one you're probably aware of, but I want to start with this one, even though it's a bit basic, because even if you're aware of it, I'm worried that you're not all using it, and you should be. Creating your own custom maps and alerts. So for those who don't know what this feature is, you can go onto Rightmove, and you can draw maps of areas to say, I want to know about any properties in this area that meet this specific criteria. So you may be after properties under 100,000 in this particular area, and if any come on, you get an alert. Or you may be after development opportunities, so you're looking for big blocks, and you're open to looking at very wide areas. I've got one particular search that pretty much covers the whole of the Northwest. But then you may want to use this because you have a very specific area you want to target or invest in. And generally the postcodes don't quite target it enough for you. You may get most of what you want, but you want to go road by road and draw it out. You can do that too. It's a really, really good tool. It's absolutely free to use. You've just got to sign up, but there's no downside to it. Then you can have those alerts sent to you weekly, daily, or the instant they go live. I have it set as instant because, as you probably know, property is quite important to me and what I do day to day. So I have them as instant. At the end of our tips, I'll tell you what I do with those instant alerts. They come in by email, but I've got a clever hack for you, which I will share with you a bit later on. But as a basic, go and do that. Set up your custom maps today. You can do all types of searches, and it's very, very useful.
Yeah, and by the way, you can do that on Zoopla as well. And just to reiterate, if you're not doing this, I'd say this is an absolute must. You'll find this to be a game changer. Because if you don't do this and you just do the normal radius search, with most areas, you're going to find that pulls in lots of places that just aren't relevant to you. So often there'll be an area where you're putting a postcode, and in one direction of that postcode, it'll be a sort of what you're interested in demographically or price-wise or whatever. And then in the other direction, it'll be completely different. It doesn't break down neatly by radius or by postcode. And you can actually, using the map, go in and draw it street by street to make sure that you don't get bogged down with irrelevant things. Because what I find is when I get alerts coming in all the time and lots of them aren't relevant to me, I just kind of filter them out and switch off to it, and then you might miss something. So chances are you're doing this already, but if you're not, seriously do.
And then if you want to level it up, do this. So auction property can provide a great opportunity for getting a deal. Not at the auction. Well, you can do that, but that's what everyone does. You can be a little bit smarter by using Rightmove and take advantage of auction properties that get listed immediately. Properties that are going to auction are a prime opportunity for a deal if you get in very early, the moment they're listed. But it is hard to find those properties. There are services you can use, such as EI Group, but that's a bit pricey, and you may not want to go to that level when you're starting out. So try this instead. Use those custom searches, but use them for auction properties, which you can do for Rightmove. And then when they come on, try to act quickly and get offers in before they go to auction, and you may get yourself a good deal. Rightmove also have a function where you can sign up via email to get notifications of auction properties as well. So a double win there, but one that you should really look at. Now, personally, I will look at blocks because I want to deal in volume. But you can do this on an individual basis too. It's a really powerful tool. Giving all the trade secrets today, Rob, but this one is really good. Make sure you take advantage of it.
You know what? My self-image as a geek is under threat here, Rob, because I did not know that. I've learned something today from the podcast. I had no idea, but now I see that, yep, if you go in and you do a search and then you go into filters, one of the options there is auction property. So that's how you get that one. And then, of course, you want to search by most recent, so the recent ones. So you can swoop on the ones that have just gone up. So there you go. Was not aware of that one. What else have you got up your sleeve?
Well, I think you'll know this one, Rob, but it's a tool that everyone should be using. It's the sold prices, because when you're doing your research, you want to establish if you're getting a deal. A discount from an asking price, and let's face it, you should always be pushing for a deal, may not mean that you're actually getting one now. You want to see what comparable properties have sold for. Rightmove and Zoopla make it very easy for you to look at the land registry for free and search sold prices in that area. You can also search by the type of property, the length of time back you want to go, the radius from this particular property. A really useful tool that, again, not everybody's using, but if you're taking property investment seriously, and let's face it, if you listen to some podcasts, you probably are, then this is another tool that you should be using.
Yeah, what's really cool about that is you can get the same information directly from the land registry website, but with Rightmove, you get the photos as well a lot of the time. So if that property's been on Rightmove in the past, most of them have, then you'll actually get to see the photos that went with the original listing, which is great because you can actually see the condition of the property, which is something that you wouldn't be able to tell from the land registry. So that's how I always go and get my sold prices. You can do it a few different ways, but I get them through Rightmove exactly like that by just going to house prices at the top and then sold house prices. So finally for Rightmove, another tip that hopefully people will be aware of, because we've mentioned this quite a bit, but just wanted to make sure that everyone is up to speed with this, because this is really useful. And this is using a plugin that shows you the price history for any given listing. So the classic is for the Firefox browser. There's a tool called Property Bee. And that is fantastic because it adds this extra information into the page showing you when the price has changed, when the description or the status has changed. So you can actually go back and see over time how the listing has been modified. So if you can see that it's been listed for 4 months and every month they've dropped the price by 10 grand or so, that tells you that clearly they're motivated to sell because they're cutting the price. Or you might see that it's gone under offer and then come back on again. And that's really interesting because if that's just happened, then maybe you've got a vendor who's already gone off and found something else, then their sale's fallen through. So they might be open to an offer. So that's a really great tool. We've been talking about that for years now. If you use Chrome instead, then you can't use Property Bee, but there is another plugin called Property Tracker for Chrome. And that does roughly the same thing. It doesn't give you quite as much information, but it does, under the price for each property, show you the price changes. So it doesn't show you status changes or description changes, but it does show you the price changes, and that's the most important. So even if you use a different browser day to day, I strongly recommend that you install either Chrome or Firefox and install either Property Tracker for Chrome or Property Bee, because that information is so valuable. And remember, even though we've talked about it a lot, in the wider world, almost nobody is going to know about this, so you'll have information that hardly anyone else does. So spend 2 minutes installing a plugin and you'll have access to all this information that most other people won't have.
That's 2 previous resources of the week there. It shows you why the resources of the week are so popular, but shows you that they don't age. They're still so important to be using. And as a Chrome user, I use Property Tracker nearly every day.
All right, so those are our tips for how to use Rightmove like a pro. But if you're a fan of Zoopla instead, then there's no reason to feel left out. And really, you should be using both because there are always going to be some properties that are on one, but not the other. So to make sure you get full coverage, you should really be set up on both, have your alerts for both sites. Now, we've just been talking about those plugins. Those don't work for Zoopla, but there's no need to worry because there's actually similar functionality built into Zoopla itself. So if you go and look at any property, then on the right-hand side, there's a little section called Listing History. On there, sometimes it doesn't have anything much. It'll show you the page views, which is kind of interesting because you can see how many other people have been interested and checked out this property. But often it will show you another couple of pieces of information as well. Now, the first of those pieces of information is any price changes. So it will show you the price when it was first listed and the date that it was first listed, and it'll show you if the price has changed. So that's very much the same as the information that you have to use a plugin to get that information over on Rightmove. So that's really cool. And I actually didn't spot that for a long time because it's kind of on the right-hand side underneath a load of stuff about transport and switching your broadband and all that kind of thing. I didn't realize it was there. Then when I did realize, that's fantastic. So you might have missed that as well. Here's another way that you can use that information though. A lot of the time, it'll show you the last sold price and date. So it'll say this sold for $115,000 on the 26th of June, 2013. Now that's interesting in itself because that'll tell you a little something about the vendor's situation. So if they're selling it for far more than they bought it for, then maybe there's some room in that price because they've got plenty of profit to play with. If they're selling it for the same or less, then, well, maybe there isn't. Maybe they need to get a certain price to clear their mortgage, or maybe they're distressed and they just want to get rid. So that's useful information. But also, you can take it a step further because it doesn't show you the actual address on either Rightmove or Zoopla. So it doesn't show you the street number or the apartment number. But if you know the date and the last sold price, you can then go into the sales price history from the land registry and figure out the exact address. So if you wanted to be a bit cheeky and bypass the agent, you could actually go and match up this data with the sold prices, find out the exact address and send a letter that way. So that information is kind of hidden away, but really powerful.
A simple one now, and one you're probably aware of, but just to let you know and make you aware of it, is the area stats. Rob's gone into real detail there of different ways you can use Zoopla and far more detailed than the area stats, but it is useful if you're getting to know an area. So if you're based in London and you're looking to invest in Manchester or Liverpool or Leeds and you're trying to get to know an area and understand what it's done in the past and where it might go in the future, the area stats feature by Zoopla is pretty good. I wouldn't base any decisions on it, but it's a good starting point to build your education on an area, to understand what property prices should be, because they give you the average of certain types, give you the history of the price growth or not, as the case may be. Again, don't worry about if you haven't seen a lot of growth before. That may mean growth is on its way. So history doesn't always tell you the future. But it's just an interesting tool, a basic one on Zoopla, but worth mentioning just in case you haven't seen it.
Yep, that's some good data. And there's some more data you can get out of Zoopla as well. Across the top, there's a section called Agents. And if you go into that, you can get a list of all the estate agents and letting agents who operate in a particular postcode. So that's kind of useful in itself, because if you're interested in buying in a particular area, that's a kind of a one-click way to get a list of all the estate agents that you want to be making sure that you're speaking to who have properties listed in that postcode. And the same goes for lettings if you're looking for someone to let your property. But it gives you some stats as well. So for each agent, it tells you the number of properties they've got for sale and the number for rent, the kind of asking price for sale and rent, and the age of those listings. So by looking at that, you can get a feel for how active each agent is in that area, their type of property that they're selling, because you can extrapolate from the price. Are they relatively expensive or relatively cheap properties on average? Because in general, agents tend to specialize in a certain type. And from the age, you can see how good they are. You can compare their average sales and rentals with other agents. Now, that's not going to be particularly accurate because it all depends when they take it down. Some agents take things down earlier than others. Others sort of tend to leave them on there for a bit. So it's not something you want to put too much faith in, but it's nice that that data is there. And it's one of those sections of the site that you might not have known was there. Very easy to miss, but hopefully once you realize that data is there, you can start spotting some interesting ways that you can use it. And another thing that I'd missed until very recently was the fact that you can do a travel time search when you're looking at properties for sale or to rent as well. All you have to do is go into either for sale or to rent at the top. There's an option that says travel time search. And when you do that, you can stick in a postcode or an address. You can choose your travel time and you can choose the method of transport. So that's really interesting for finding commutable areas. So if there's a particular location that's really strong for employment, or you think that it's going to become really strong and you see a bit of an opportunity there, but the immediate area is very expensive or the yield doesn't stack up for you, then you can use this to find other areas you might want to target where people could be commuting from there to the area you identified originally. So there are other tools where you can do that kind of thing, but it's really useful to have all of that in the same place. And Rob, you told me earlier, I didn't know this one either, you can actually do that on Rightmove as well.
You can. It's quite interesting. I just did a search of central London and I wanted to find two-bed properties within a certain time frame within this central location in London. And what was really interesting is it gave me the postcode of the only place within the M25 that you could still get a two-bed property for $250 or less, and that was Barking, which was quite interesting. Now, that doesn't mean you should all go invest in Barking. It just means that there's value there compared to some other areas. But I wouldn't have known that without this search. So it's an interesting one. It's not something that you'd base all your investment decisions on, but it's an interesting tool that you can take advantage of. So some of this is like must-dos, and some of it has been a bit geeky, but like you can do some powerful stuff with. I think this one falls into the latter category again, because if you use this correctly, it can be really powerful. So the tool in question is on Zoopla, and it's a keyword search function. So when you search your properties, you can search in areas, property types, all the rest of it, but you can also add a keyword that must appear in the property's description somewhere for it to show up. Well, how would this be useful? Well, there's multiple ways it's useful, but let me give you an example. You may be looking for a property with a lot of land because you may be looking for a development opportunity. So if you can find, I don't know, a small bungalow on an acre in a residential area, there might be something you could do with that. Now, you're going to have to see quite a few of those opportunities to find the right ones, but how can you find them? Because you can't, as a function, put lots of land as a search criteria. But what you can do is use your keyword tool. And in this case, where I would search is acre or acres, because often a estate agent will list if a property has a lot of land, and it will often say this has 2 acres or this has 1 acre, wherever it may be. But suddenly you're able to find properties and search for properties that pretty much nobody else will be able to do. A really sneaky tip. Obviously, you can tell I'm quite chuffed with this one, but I find it so useful. If I'm looking for certain types of properties or a certain feature or land, this is a great tool to use. So check it out. Keyword search on Zoopla. Take advantage of it.
Yeah, that is an absolutely brilliant one. If you're not doing that, I think that is another game changer. So we've taken you through Rightmove, we've taken you through Zoopla. With any luck, you'll have learned something. I've learned something and I thought I knew a lot. But we're just going to leave you with a little bit more that takes it up a level once again. So this first one works on both sites and it's really simple. But it's again just letting you know that it's there, because if you work with an assistant or a VA, you might find this very useful. Both sites have got the functionality to save properties and to make notes on them. They both work in slightly different ways. I actually think that the way Zoopla does it is slightly better, but you can save properties and you can make notes, which means that if you've got a VA who goes and books in viewings for you, for example, you can just go through, you can save a load of properties, you can leave notes on them if appropriate, maybe about a question that you want them to ask for you. Then they can just work through that list, book in whatever you want to be booked. If they learn anything, they can leave those as notes on there. Really, really simple. So there are lots of other ways of doing this as well. We, of course, advocate using Trello for this sort of thing. But if you don't want to bring other tools into the mix and just do this purely on Rightmove or Zoopla, that is something that works really nicely that I've actually done before. So Rob, you teased us earlier with a hack that you used. I think to wrap this episode up, you should really reveal all, or we're going to get lots of people asking us what it is that you're talking about. So this is something that you've done to get around a feature that we used to use, but Rightmove took away.
Yes, indeedy, Rob. So previously, many moons ago, we told you how you can use an RSS feed. I won't tell you what RSS is now. We haven't got time. Just go and Google it if you don't understand what that is. But you can use an RSS feed on Rightmove to send your properties to Trello. Trello is a tool we've talked about umpteen times. You should definitely check it out. Now, this used to be brilliant because you'd set your searches up, and when your search was triggered, it would send your properties via this hack to Trello. Now, unfortunately, Rightmove has disabled its RSS feed. So does that mean you can no longer send your properties from Rightmove and Zoopla to Trello? Well, it does if you're not creative, but luckily we're creative, so we've got a workaround for you. And this is something we do. So what you can do is with your alerts, Rightmove and Zoopla, they will go into your inbox. Okay, so they'll go into your inbox, but you want to forward these on because in Trello, your Trello board will have a dedicated email. In the top right corner, go into the settings options, it will give you a dedicated email. What you need to do is take that email address, go back into your email provider, whether it's Gmail, Outlook, whatever it may be, and say that any emails that come from Zoopla or Rightmove forward into this Trello email address. So you set a forwarding feature, anything from Rightmove, Zoopla, just archive it and forward it to my Trello board. And then you go to your Trello board and all your deals are listed there. You want the settings on instant so you don't get a roundup of properties in each email that comes through. Trello will automatically turn that email into a card that then you can use and assess whether you want to look at that deal and do anything with it. We probably should do a video of this, Rob, because that was really hard to explain via audio, so we probably will at some point do a video of that. But hopefully you've got the gist. If you're a little bit geeky, you'll be able to figure that out. If you use Trello, I'm sure you'll be fine. But Rob, did it make some semblance of sense?
Yeah, I followed, don't worry. And yeah, is that something that I don't do, but I can't believe I don't do, because that's a really great tip. So maybe if you are experienced with Trello and you're a little bit on the geeky side, that could be a light bulb moment for you. I think anything that gets things out of your inbox and into somewhere more useful is great. Otherwise, things are just going to get lost. But as Rob said, if that didn't make any sense for you and audio is not the best medium, we'll make sure that we do a little video for that at some point. So there you go. I think it's fair to say that if you start doing even 50% of that, you will then be using Rightmove and Zoopla like a pro. You'll have seen with things like the keywords, how you can find things that other people will miss as a result. You found how you can get inside information and data that other people won't have. And you can also save yourself loads of time. You've now listened to about 20 minutes of us talking about this stuff. It might take you another 20 minutes to go and play around with some of these bits and figure out how it all works and how it can work for you. But that is going to be paid back so many times over. These are such powerful tools. It's unbelievable what you can do from your desktop. We're so lucky that we're investing in property now compared to 20 years ago. So given that all that information is out there and it can be so easy, it's really worth just taking a little bit of time and working out how to use them to their full potential.
You should, and you should use our resource of the week to its full potential as well, which we're about to give you. But first, we must acknowledge the outstanding human beings that have left us reviews. First up, a big thanks to Pippa, who says, as a fairly inexperienced investor, I stumbled across the Property Hub podcast a few months ago, and I've been trying to catch up on all the old episodes and take advantage of the vast wealth of tips, knowledge, insights offered by Rob and Rob. Each episode is accessible, interesting and often witty. Can't thank you enough, Rob and Rob, for your brilliant help to all the new and potential investors. Looking forward to what the future holds and the advice you will give me, as well as your books, 100 Property Investment Tips and Beyond the Bricks, both fantastic. And another one, quick one, from Vinit. And Vinit says, thank you for putting the podcast out. It's a great tool to help people get into property investment. The podcast contains useful and actionable information by the bucket load. The two Robs have great chemistry. Possibly a little too much. This comes out on the show and provides something that's both entertaining and useful. Too much chemistry, Rob. People will start talking.
Let's not get that rumour mill flying. Maybe we should make sure that we're showing our wedding rings in the photo at the top of the website. Anyway, thank you so much for those reviews. Very much appreciated. Let's try and give you a little bit of payback in the form of a resource of the week. And this one, Rob, is one that neither of us have used.
Yes, well, it's episode 235, so we've given you a fair few resources. But hopefully, this episode, you'll feel like we're still banging out the value, and we want to continue with this resource. So it's a resource that's been highly recommended to us. We've both seen in action. I've just literally downloaded because we needed to give you a resource. And it is Waze. W-A-Z-E, Waze. And it's a sat-nav tool on steroids. It's absolutely brilliant from what I've seen. I've had friends rave about this app to me, and I keep saying, yes, I must download that. But normally it's because I'm stuck in traffic and haven't been able to download it yet. And then when I get out the traffic, that's the last thing I want to do is start downloading apps. So I have downloaded it this morning, Waze. Check it out. It comes highly recommended. And when you look at it, it is fantastic. It claims to help you avoid traffic jams, which I know some sat-navs do, but it's a bit hit and miss. That my experience has shown me on how effectively they do that. But also police. I don't know how they do that. But the thing I like is the experience of using it. It is very clean. It looks really nice compared to a lot of sat-navs that you use. It just feels a lot more user-friendly. So it's free. Check it out. It's Waze. You can get it on iTunes and the Android store. Well worth looking at, especially if you listen to us in the car now, stuck in traffic.
Yep, which I know a lot of people do. I've seen a lot of Uber drivers using this, and chances are they know a thing or two about the different options out there. So if they're using it, it's probably the best. So one to check out for sure. Another one to check out is the Property Podcast next week, of course. Always worth a listen, we like to think, but probably even more so next week, because we are doing an episode on listener deals. We've done 2 of these in the past, super popular. So we asked you last week, and we asked you over social media to send in your deals, and send in your deals you did. We're going to be picking out a few of our favourites to go over in next week's show, so make sure you're listening to see if yours is featured, and to see how we go about assessing a deal. So this week you've seen how we use these tools, and next week you'll get a bit of an insight into our thought process. So make sure you tune in for that next Thursday.
Yeah, as Rob said, they are very popular episodes. Get a lot of good feedback from that, and the download numbers are huge. So make sure you don't miss out if you've not heard one of those before. And also make sure you don't miss out on our webinar. We don't like talking about RMP property and yellow. We're not going to talk about the webinars in as much as we have this episode either, because We just want to give you the good stuff like this episode, which hopefully you agree with. But if you do want to find out how these companies can probably help many of you, then go to thepropertyhub.net/discover. That's thepropertyhub.net/discover. Register for free. Join us on the 27th of September at 6 p.m. and we will take you through exactly what we do. And as Rob said, no hard sell. Don't bring your wallets. There's nothing to buy, but it's just to find out about what we do and hear Rob and I tell a few bad jokes along the way. So make sure you join us for that if you are interested.
All right, so that is us done for this week. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next on Tuesday with Ask Rob and Rob. Until then, enjoy your week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Property Podcast. For show notes, all our past episodes, and to leave a review, go to thepropertyhub.net/podcast.